All right. So it's nighttime. Hello, everybody. Just wanted to make a video because of I was really surprised by the popularity of the post-millennial movies about sex videos that I made. So figured I'll continue doing that and go a little deeper. So today I wanted to talk about, or tonight I wanted to talk about the movie of Brave New World. And it's not a movie, it's a book actually. It's a very good book. It's actually written at a university level because it was, even after college it was kind of difficult for me to go through it because of the vocabulary and so forth, and the and just the amount of material that was in that book. It's not obviously a fictional story. It's actually a prediction of the future that Aldous Huxley saw taking place in the 1930s. So he wrote that in 1931 or something, the book. And that's pretty much what he saw happening in the future of with technology and the control of the gender roles and the gender issue, basically. So that movie is pretty deep because it talks about a society divided into 4 or 5 classes, very similar to the Hindu caste system of the 4 classes. You know, the Brahmins, the head class, or in the movie it's the intellectual class. And the movie that's available on YouTube, I recommend you watch the earlier version, the one that was released in 1958 or so. Around the same time, Huxley was promoting his follow-up book, Brave New World Revisited, and he was talking about these issues. Like, he gave that speech at Berkeley, which was very useful to go through because it talks about mind control and all kinds of things. And the reason Huxley knew so much was because he was part of that Brahmin class, or the head class, the intellectual class, the alpha class, the managerial class, the scientific class that managed society. So his brother was Julian Huxley, who was a prominent member of the UNESCO, United Nations Educational Fund, basically controlling the minds of the children. And in the book we see a lot of information about how children are raised in this brave new world, you know? A brave new world. What does that mean? A brave means a big idea, you know? A very ambitious movement by the elite to manage society in a new direction. So in his speech, Huxley says that in human society there's always been slavery because society or civilization exists on a class divide. It necessitates a class divide, as I'm talking about in the Millennium book. So Huxley says that there's always been slavery in one form or the other, and his prediction of this futuristic society is a society in which slavery is accepted by the people who are the slaves themselves, because they don't, first off, they don't know they're slaves, they think they're free, and second, by a very pleasant kind of society where drugs, sex, and everything is dished out to the people freely so they can enjoy after the work and play, work hard, play hard. So before I got into Huxley, I learned a lot about how education was used to mind control the people through the work of the master teacher, John Taylor Gatto. And one of the things he says is how education serves a role in society. It serves a role in separating and segregating people based on their qualities into certain categories. So one of the most important roles of education is to basically, sexual selection. So the school system actually has a lot to do with the sexual dynamics, because one of the roles of education is to select the winners and the losers. Selection is one of the five critical areas that education was. The mission of modern public education is said to be the selective process. Because we are living in the order of the money, economy has everything to do with everything. So by labeling certain kids in certain economic spheres, that's how they, in certain economic categories, or in certain classes like the betas or the gammas or the epsilons, submorons. It puts people in those categories, and therefore it does a sexual selection. So yeah, and that was pretty insightful right there. And you see that in the Brave New World movie too, how the social status of individuals in the different classes is managed through the public opinions and the so forth. So the protagonist of the novel, who later becomes the antagonist or the evil guy, is Bernard Marx. He's that young guy, an alpha plus, the top caliber of society, but unfortunately, due to an accident and unforeseen glitch in the system, he becomes physically like a gamma, but intellectually he remains in the alpha plus category. So because of a little bit of alcohol poisoning during his birth, physically he came out inferior to the rest in his class of alphas. So when it comes time for sexual selection, it's not easy for him because he's already seen as a bit of a deviant. So because of this unfortunate tragedy, he gets to see the world in a different way, and he gets to be discontent with the status, with this brave new world society, just like his friend, the poet. What was his name? I forgot his name, but the guy who plays the black guy in the movie, basically, the African dude in the movie, who's a friend of Bernard, and then later John the Savage. So we saw that. So through his eyes, we see a lot of things about gender being revealed. How everybody he meets is basically one of the sheeple, one of the people who believe in the lies that are promoted by the society of the Brave New World. So, for example, because he prefers solitude, he's seen as eccentric and different and weird. So Bernard Marx is the original MGTOW, and then later becomes Helmholtz, the poet. Or he's also kind of MGTOW because now he's on the other side of the perspective, the side of abundance. And then there's John the Savage, who's also MGTOW because he has different values from the Brave New World society. So Lenina kind of represents the female who is, just like everybody else, is believing on the lies of the Brave New World society, but through her experience with John the Savage, she kind of gets to see all the different, a different kind of perspective eventually about monogamy and so forth, monogamy and true love and all that, devotion to one individual instead of everybody, belonging to everybody, where there's no connection between romantic love. It's only like a physical act, a release, sexual release, basically. So there was a beautiful scene in the movie where John the Savage has a date with Lelina Crawford, and they're at the movies watching the movies, and John is revolted by the smut that he sees, and he basically goes against it, but everybody sees him as weird and strange because of that. And Lenina is offended by his behavior in public because he calls the movie smut when she sees it as perfectly normal and reasonable. Then we also have the scene where John is revolted by Lenina because of her promiscuity and her permissive sexual attitudes and moving too fast for the savage. And how the savage is frustrated because of being totally alone in the Brave New World society, so he has to go live by himself and eventually commits suicide. Which probably explains a lot having to do with male suicide in the West today too, very close parallels between his dissatisfaction and that of the modern male. So that's another tie-in right there. And then we also see how in this society of free sex and sexual liberation, how having traditional views makes you be seen as a deviant when that is the normal, natural state of a tribal human. So that's also an interesting depiction. Reading the book is actually much more revelatory because it shows how certain things are promoted at a very young age, including sex, in order to mold the minds of the society, the people in society. And we also see how information and the things that the public are allowed to see is very censored and controlled because the world controller is watching Helmholtz and his production and very critical of Helmholtz when he tries to be very free thinking and outside the box in his presentation. And there's a scene in the movie too where the world controller tells Helmholtz how, you know, you don't understand the subtleties of this art, and basically you can't just do what you think is enlightening to the masses. You have to keep it in the script, so to speak. Or else the public will be confused or basically will have cognitive dissonance because of an alternative idea being presented which was not approved for them to consume, because that would challenge their deeply held propaganda beliefs. So yeah, Brave New World is a great movie to watch and learn from. So and you also see how women take in a lot of opinions from their friends and so forth in the movie, and how her friends are always talking bad about the guy that she's interested in initially, who is Bernard Marx, just because he looks different from the other alphas and he has a reputation of being brain damaged from his accident in the artificial womb, which is another interesting thing. In the future, the woman won't give birth, and we're already seeing that today, where the birth rate is falling at below sustainable level for Western European people. And yeah, and how having too many babies is frowned upon by the modern society. Eventually we'll be having any babies without artificial technology is going to be frowned upon and made illegal, like it's already illegal in China to have more than one baby. and so forth. So everything is there in that movie. If you really understand the deeper trends, you can see the parallels to our society. And if you read the book, you'll also understand where he's coming from. And if you hear his speeches at Berkeley and read the follow-up book, Brave New World Revisited, that's the best way really to get an understanding of the whole society that we live in, not just gender and sex and procreation issues. 1984 also has a lot of information on that. The book is much better because of all the details in there. But the movie has a lot too. 1984. In 1984, we see how Big Brother is very keen to control the relations between men and women in the society, especially the ones of the class that is the helper class to the oligarchy. Forgot, what were they? The outer party. For the proles, the rules are relaxed because the social justice stuff is not so relevant to their class. Because people are more down to earth, not so much only trapped in book smarts and therefore easily programmed through the control of information dispensed to them. So yeah, 1984 is another one. And I also talked about Devil's Advocate, and I didn't really talk so much about the details, but in that movie, you'll see how the temptations that are present in the big city for the country girl, the wife of the main character, and how the city women are corrupting her, telling her to spend her husband's money on fashion because he won't spend any time with you anymore because he's too busy. So just have fun and give up your religious values. They were even, I don't know if they were trying to promote promiscuity with her, but eventually she was tempted by promiscuity too, by having an affair with her husband's boss. And then she became suicidal because she saw her boss was the devil, and she saw his real side. And after seeing all the evil, basically, she just wanted to kill herself because that's how it becomes demonic oppression or whatever they say. But yeah, Devil's Advocate is a great movie about gender and about the sexual thing in the workforce. You know, the sexual temptations in the workforce and the increased opportunity. And you see how feminism has really hurt the woman because the mother was a single mother of that man whose father was the devil, and she was hurt by that sexual freedom too. And then you see how the powerful men, have all the sexual access they want. Then you see how the good woman, the wife of the protagonist or the main character, how she has a harder time because she's good, and the evil woman, they're having all the fun they want to have. So nothing really stopping them from doing anything or having any guilt and conscience attacks of conscience. So yeah, that movie is also great. Devil's Advocate, 1984, and Brave New World. So that's pretty much it. Almost 20 minutes. So I'm gonna stop it here. Till the next episode. Take care.